What's up, dinguses? Continuing with the trend of ill-advised music tier list videos that I didn't write a script for, I figured it was due time that we looked into one specific band's discography and ranked them, as opposed to looking at a bunch of bands out of one genre. And if I'm going to do this, why would I start with a band that has incredibly accessible music and very easily understood musical themes and compositions? Because as Benjamin Franklin once said, fuck that shit, let's talk about Tool. For those of you who don't know, Tool is, for all intents and purposes, a progressive metal band that formed in Los Angeles in 1990. They comprise of Danny Carey on drums, Adam Jones on guitar, Maynard James Keenan as the vocalist, and depending on which album you're listening to, either Paul Diamore or Justin Chancellor on bass. Despite only having 5 albums across a 30-year time span, they've garnered tremendous critical and commercial success without catering to one specific trend or one specific section of the record-buying public. And as we've discussed in my critically acclaimed video on crazy fan bases, go watch it if you haven't yet, Tool makes very dense and heady music that's found its way into the hearts of their crazed fan base. And being an admirer of Tool myself, I hope you'll find it as fun as I do as we go through their entire discography and rank all the songs. So you may have already noticed that asterisk I put on the thumbnail. When I say every Tool song, I'm lying. Today, we are only ranking songs from Tool's 5 studio albums, those being Undertow, AEnima, Lateralus, 10,000 Days, and finally Fear Inoculum. So I just want to get this out of the way. We are not talking about any of the songs on the EPs or any of the live recordings. Also, Tool includes a lot of interlude tracks where it's either ambient noise or just loose instrumentals. We're not going to be talking about those either. Secondly, please keep in mind that I have a very heavy bias when it comes to this band, but there are still some songs that I think are stinkers. If I end up putting a song lower on this list than you'd prefer, just keep in mind that a C-tier Tool song is miles above an S-tier Hoobastank song. Your liking for music, at the end of the day, is subjective. This video is for fun. Thirdly, I'll be implementing an S+ tier in this video. I'll also be removing the F tier because, let's be honest, there's no F tier Tool songs. Lastly, don't forget to like and subscribe, and if you happen to have a band that you want me to dive deep into and rank all their songs, let me know in the comments. So without further ado, let's get into it. Alright, so starting out with the first song on the first album, Undertow, we have Intolerance. I think Intolerance serves to be a good album starter as well as, well, the introduction to Tool. The song goes over trying to be a tolerant person, but when you're met with liars and cheaters, you can't tolerate that. Musically, it's just a good early 90s rock song, A tier. And if you thought I was a little short on that last ranking, please do keep in mind that that's kind of the nature of the video and I have to keep things going along. I'll stew when it's needed. And we might stew around right now for the next song, Prison Sex. I'm putting Prison Sex in the A tier, but I do think it is a better song than Intolerance. Prison Sex just has a very infectious groove, which is really weird because of the song's subject matter, which many people point to as a metaphor for religious indoctrination. Also, maybe because it sounds more like a standard rock song, that it's a good thing that it was on their first album. Some bands can get away with putting out 15-minute odysseys on their first record and their second song, others can't. Tool probably could have, but instead they made a song called Prison Sex. And if we're talking about accessible Tool songs, you can't really get more accessible than the next song, Sober. One big difference between Paul Diamore on bass on this album as opposed to Justin Chancellor for the rest of Tool's discography is that he tends to play more chords on the bass. He's probably a much more talented bassist than this record gives him credit for, or it might just be me comparing the bass elements in this album to everything else that Justin Chancellor did going forward. Be that as it may, Sober is an S-tier Tool song. Ironically enough, it's really awesome to listen to when you're inebriated, which, hey, maybe that was their plan all along. It was Tool's breakout song, and for that, it has a special place in all of our hearts. Next up, we have Bottom, and I won't be putting it at the bottom, but I won't be putting it at the top either. This is where I might run into some controversy with the Tool army, because I'm going to put a Tool song in C tier. I really do like Maynard's spoken word parts in this song. And for the rest of Undertow, he does a lot of spoken word that he doesn't really do in the next albums. Next up is Crawl Away and C tier. I can tell Adam's having a lot of fun on this song. Next up is Swamp Song, and Swamp Song is going to go in the A tier. I think next to Sober, this might be Maynard's best vocal performance on the record, especially when we get into this part. Moving on through the album, we have the titular song, Undertow. I don't know what it is about Undertow for me in particular, but I really feel as though Adam shines the most in this record. Because going forward, the band kind of just acts as this one wall of sound, or a being with different limbs is how I've always liked to put it. But whether or not the composition called for it, or it was just a production choice, I think I hear Adam a lot more. I don't know. What are your opinions? Yeah, the opening riff to this song is just clean as hell. Next up is 4 Degrees, and we'll be putting it in the A tier. I think next to Sober, or maybe even Prison Sex, this might be the best song on the album. They never stray too far away from that main riff, but they incorporate it in different movements in the song. Coming in at 6 minutes, you can kind of play around with the dynamics of a composition, and I think they just do it so well in 4 Degrees. Next up, Flood is a B-tier Tool song, but I do think it really foreshadows a lot of what's to come on the next record. But I'm going to get to that later when it becomes relevant again, trust me. And finally, for the purposes of this video, D-tier stands for Disgustipated, the last song on Undertow. I almost didn't include Disgustipated on this list because it kind of does fit into the musical interludes that Tool does, but those are often only a couple minutes long, if that, and Disgustipated is 15 minutes long. The one saving grace about Disgustipated is the spoken word we get from Maynard as a reverend at the beginning of the song, but beyond that, it's just filler. Now this is where shit starts to get real crazy. Moving on to Tool's second album, AEnima. Stinkfist is an S-tier Tool song. This is one of those songs from Tool that if you don't really know Tool, you may have heard this one. Or at least this mashup with Taylor Swift. Not only does Stinkfist as a song just kick absolute ass, but this is where Maynard really started getting funky with the lyrical content. Because Stinkfist is a song, to me at least, is either a song about malicious and self-sabotaging overindulgence, or it's about butt stuff. Tell me down in the comments if you think the song called Stinkfist is about butt stuff. Moving on, we have, in my opinion, the most underrated Tool song, Eulogy. S-tier, all the way. The song opens up with very simple percussion, and as it goes on, more instruments are dropped in and more riffs are dropped in, to where it crescendos in the best song ever written about L. Ron Hubbard. When I first discovered Tool, I was really just listening to Lateralus, and people told me that AEnima might even be better, and I didn't believe them. And I had heard Stinkfist before, but it was really listening to Eulogy that made me go, oh, these white boys are crazy. Moving on, we're going to put the next song, H, in A tier. H stands as a really good transition song from the first album to the next album. I don't know the exact history, but please do comment down below if you do. But a part of me feels as if H was a song that was written and recorded for Undertow. They just couldn't sneak it in there in time, and then they decided to use it on their next album. Just because so much of AEnima differs from Undertow, and especially with our next song, our first S+ song. 46 and 2, in my opinion, is Tool's most optimistic song. Mind you, it took listening to it about 100 times to come to that conclusion. Without getting into all the weeds about this song, it more or less has to do with wanting to evolve and change. Especially if you were really into this guy. Also, I had the pleasure of re-listening to all these albums before I did this tier list. And one thing I noticed that I didn't notice before is this riff in Flood from Undertow sounds strangely like a riff in 46 and 2. Yeah, I don't know, but I can't overstate what little feelings in my tum-tum that 46 and 2 gives me. It gives me goose pimples. It gives me fun time in my brain and in my soul and in my heart. Next up is Hooker with the Penis, and we're going to put it in A tier. I'm not even going to talk about this one. If you don't know this song, you have to listen to it. I will elaborate no further. And I said I wasn't going to include any of Tool's interludes here, but I'm just going to mention Intermission because it is my favorite Tool interlude. It's real catchy. Next song is Jimmy, and we're going to put it in the B tier. Again, not a bad song by any degree. I actually really love the rhythms they use in this song, but compared to Stinkfist, Eulogy, and 46 and 2, it just doesn't grab me. But the next song does. Push It is an S+ Tool song. Push It, if you want to take it at face value, is a song about domestic violence. Not only do they handle this topic with a lot of grace, but I think they conveyed those feelings in the music. You're lost, you're hurt, you're pissed off. And I think the song itself does a really good job to convey that. For some, it might be very unfortunate that I'm not including Salival as one of their albums, because the live version of Push It is sublime. Enema is an S-tier Tool song. All I'll say about this one is that if you live anywhere over here, right, good luck. And finishing off of AEnima, we have Third Eye. Third Eye has a lot of cool production, and the band really pops off musically, but it's kind of bloated. A big saving grace for this song, though, is the inclusion of the Bill Hicks set at the beginning of the song. Bill Hicks being a late but very good stand-up comedian that was friends with Maynard. Third Eye, C tier. Moving on to Tool's third album, Lateralus, we have the opening song, The Grudge. When I first got into Tool, The Grudge was not one of my favorites. When it first started playing, I was like, no, too much. Stop. What do you... No. But across listening to the album as a whole on repeat, I found The Grudge to be one of Tool's best tracks. Although this is disputed, Maynard James Keenan might go down as having the longest scream in any song. Also, Danny Carey goes absolutely bananas on the drums in this song. Next up, we have The Patient. Not a ton to say about this one other than that it's an A-tier Tool song, and Schism, on the other hand, is S+. I think Schism is a defining song in progressive rock, not just progressive metal or just a Tool song. And it's this song alone that really puts to bed any argument as whether or not Paul Diamore or Justin Chancellor was the better bassist in Tool. Again, that bass riff in Sober is tight as hell, but it's not the time signature beauty that Justin Chancellor playing Schism is. So even though the next two songs are two separate tracks, I'm going to talk about them as one. That is Parable and Parabola. Not only is the wordplay between these two tracks awesome, but they also maintain probably the most seamless and breathtaking transition between any two songs in music. If you haven't listened to Parable and Parabola before, or even if you have, let me know down in the comments what other transitions between two songs are just as good or if not better than Parable and Parabola. You'd be hard-pressed to find one, I think. Moving on, we have Ticks and Leeches. And I think Ticks and Leeches is what takes Lateralus away from being the perfect album. And I know I'm very hyperbolic on this channel.
Oh, that's one of the great things of all time. That's one of the great things of all time.
But I do want to put it out there is that there aren't many perfect albums. Just start to finish absolutely crushing it, and it's just maintained its vision and effect through the entire thing. Ticks and Leeches feels a little out of place on this album. But even if I take Ticks and Leeches off of this album, it's still a great song, but not the best Tool song. But yeah, Ticks and Leeches for me is a B-tier Tool song. However, I have heard that the record label wanted another song on the album, and the band feeling as though the record label was sucking more and more out of them, that they made a song about them called Ticks and Leeches. I can't exactly call upon where I heard that, but if you've also heard a similar thing, let me know. So now we have the titular track, Lateralus, and this is the song that made me go, oh my god, this band is perfect. I remember I was listening to the album for the first time and driving around in the rain, and the song got about halfway through before I had to pull over, listen to the song, and then start it again. Towards the end of that second listen, I just saw the hairs on my arms standing up. Tool might not be that band for you, and I doubt it is, but I think Lateralus for me is an extension to how powerful music can be. That one song or that one artist just finds us at the right place at the right time and changes our entire outlook on life. And it was weird because I was in my college days. I had figured that I was done finding music and becoming obsessed with shit. I don't know, maybe this video is too personal, I don't know. Just go listen to Lateralus. Also, this song was famously written around the Fibonacci sequence. If you don't know what the Fibonacci sequence is or how it relates to this song, I'm not going to talk about it in this video, but I will point to videos that do explain it, and you should go watch them. And I will be talking about the last three tracks on this album as one song. Tool fans collectively call it the Holy Trinity. That being Disposition, Reflection, and Triad. As opposed to Parable and Parabola, these songs don't really flow into each other exactly, but you'll find that listening to any one of these tracks without listening to the other two at the same time is just wrong. And now we come to Tool's fourth album, 10,000 Days. And even though the first two songs on this album aren't connected in any way, I'm still going to talk about them at the same time because they're both A-tier Tool songs. Those being Vicarious and Zombie. Of course, Tool fans love Tool because they get into these really intricate musical movements that span across 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 minutes. And 10,000 Days stands out as a record of theirs because I think it just features more fun, hard rock songs, all while still sounding like Tool. Vicarious is a neat little ditty about the pervasiveness that is news media, and Zombie is more or less a song about wishing to be with somebody, which is a really interesting play on words because Zombie was the genie that granted wishes in Pee-wee's Playhouse. Zombie also has one of the most disgusting breakdowns. Yep, both just killer rock songs. Man, I really fucked up with talking about two songs in one set that really weren't related to each other because the next two songs are related to each other, those being Wings of Marie and 10,000 Days. So the story behind these two songs is just really heartbreaking and sad. Maynard James Keenan's mother was paralyzed for close to 30 years, which more or less equals 10,000 days. And even though Maynard's opinions on faith did not match his mother's, go listen to the song Judith by A Perfect Circle and you'll get the idea. These two songs represent a love letter of sorts to his mother after she passed, basically explaining why she deserves her wings and be an angel in the kingdom of God. Yeah, really heartbreaking shit. But between the two songs, I do think one is better than the other. Like, I like the first part more. I just do. Wings for Marie on Impulse is an S-tier song, and 10,000 Days is an A-tier song. Doesn't really make any sense to call it like that because it should have just been one track to begin with. But if I combined the two of them, probably A-tier. And then after you're done sobbing listening to that song for the first time, you get slapped in the face with The Pot. The Pot was my most listened to song on Spotify for 2019 and 2020. I think next to Sober, it is easily Tool's most accessible song. Justin Chancellor's bass in this song is ridiculous. And Maynard's lyrics in this are exceptional as well. The song is about hypocrisy and critiquing the justice system. And so he throws in a lot of metaphors that I think work quite well. Moving on, we have another pair of songs that go into each other with Lost Keys, Blame Hoffman, and Rosetta Stoned. Rosetta Stoned is largely instrumental, but it includes this audible scene between a doctor and a nurse. This gentleman comes into the ER and he's confused and he doesn't know his name and he doesn't have any identification. So the doctor goes over and tries to talk to him. And at the end of the song, the doctor asks the confused man to tell him everything. And that perfectly slides us into Rosetta Stoned, where we hear what happened. It was a drug trip. It was an 11-minute drug trip. And it's fucking awesome. However, if we're just looking at the tracks individually, Rosetta Stoned is A tier, and Lost Keys, Blame Hoffman is S+. The music in it is very simple. It's not very intricate, but as far as just a simple instrumental track for a vibe, I've had that song on repeat. And I also love the scene between the doctor, the nurse, and the confused man as it sets up for everything in Rosetta Stoned. Rosetta Stoned, for what it's worth, is an incredible 11-minute song. But there's parts towards the end where even I, as a diehard Tool fan, go, okay, all right, you can stop. And lastly, we have Intention and Right in Two. Again, these songs more or less kind of relate to each other. Both of these songs go over the moral quandary that despite humble and peaceful beginnings of man, at our core we have intentions to hurt one another. And in Right in Two, we're kind of with the perspective of the angels looking down at humanity and laughing at them for their bullshit. I actually think that between these two songs, we might have Maynard's finest songwriting. For as much as I will sing the praises of The Pot, Maynard is utterly profound in this song. I've always really thought about the line, repugnant is the creature who would squander the ability to lift an eye to heaven, conscious of his fleeting time here. Really makes you sit back and think, huh? But to get on with it, I'll put Intention in A tier, and honestly, Right in Two is an S+ Tool song. Also because, Danny goes bananas in this song, and I just love when that guy goes bananas. What the fuck? And it was with 10,000 Days that Tool would not release another album for 13 13 years. Those 13 years was a mix between the band not really deciding what's the best stuff to put out and a whole bunch of legal issues. But nevertheless, in 2019, we finally got it. Fear Inoculum. So the album opens up with the titular song, Fear Inoculum, and I'm going to be honest with you, it's underwhelming. I am not one of these Fear Inoculum haters. I think Fear Inoculum is a great album. Actually, if we're talking about Tool albums I listened to the most recently, I listened to Fear Inoculum the most recently on a road trip. And it was the lead single off of this record. And for it being the first Tool single in 13 years, I think it did a good job at making sure people knew that they were really moving directions here. It's masterfully composed, but just doesn't hit. But the next song definitely does. So when Fear Inoculum first dropped, I was very excited and I listened to it the whole way through and I was like, great album. And then I kind of went back to the individual tracks and I was like, oh, Numa's the worst song on the album. Then I went to go see Tool live for the first time. And very rarely have I been to a live show and been utterly speechless at the performance of one particular song. But Numa might be the best Tool song. Danny goes bananas on this song. Maynard goes bananas on this song. Adam goes bananas on this song. Justin goes bananas on this song. I really encourage you to check out this video from Vic Firth. It's just a cam on Danny as he's playing this song. And I think you can gain a special type of appreciation for him as a musician if you don't like Tool as a band. Invincible is a good song, but a C-tier Tool song. It's just about Maynard getting old. That's all it is. It's a beautiful poem about getting old. Just not my favorite song about getting old. If I get to 10,000 subscribers, I'll tell you my favorite song about getting old is. Next up, we have Descending, an S-tier Tool song all the way. I think one of the things that might turn people off of Tool is if they find this album first, because there's only one true song that's even under 6 minutes. Like Fear Inoculum to a degree is a Tool scholar album. But if you're into other progressive rock, you might want to actually start with this album, and I might even tell you to listen to Descending first. Overall, this album is a very Danny album. Like it's just all Danny. It's just all drums. But Descending in particular, I think we get Adam to shine back a little bit more into the mix. Especially the tones on his guitar towards the end of the song. It's some of my favorite guitar work that's ever been guitared. Culling Voices is a D-tier Tool song. It's one of their worst. Which is like ridiculous to say, but this song bores the shit out of me. It just does. Maynard's voice is really pretty in it, but Next up is Chocolate Chip Trip, the shortest song on the album, and it is just a 5-minute drum solo from Danny. B tier for bananas. And finally, the last song on the album, Tempest. This album has a lot of themes that have to do with the number 7. So if you're confused as to why they called Tempest 7 Tempest or whatever the fuck people call it, that's why. Before this album had officially released, I had read that there was going to be guitar riffs from the early 90s that Adam had come up with on this album. Those ended up being featured in Tempest. And of course, the initial riff is kick-ass, but quite frankly, this song is just really, really, really bloated. I just don't listen to it when I listen to the album. I'm just like, okay, now I get to go up and like go potty or make like a chicken sandwich or something and just kind of have it in the background. Like, I'm all for going crazy and going stupid. And who am I as a monolingual goofball to tell you not to go crazy, go stupid? But yeah, Adam goes crazy, goes stupid in the song for 15 minutes. And if you're like into guitar and you know, learning about how to compose something that's 15 minutes long, this is a great song. This is a terrific song for you, but I think it is a C-tier Tool song. And there it is, ladies and gentlemen. Every Tool song ranked. Am I a based king for what I've said? Or am I a cringe edgelord with no riz? Let me know down in the comments. Also, if you think I should attempt this again with another band, please let me know. But with that said, I've been Jerry Bees. You've been awesome. Take it easy.
Diggity dog. Breaking. Diggity dog.
Sir, this is the scariest moment of my life.